Ladies and gentlemen, Doug Reynolds. Doug, welcome to the show. Welcome to Become Your Own Superhero.
Thanks, Laban. Thanks for having me, man.
Well, we are in esteemed company here. Doug is the current CEO and co-founder of LowCarbUSA.
Yeah, that's right. It's been a hell of a journey.
And you are co-founder with your beautiful wife, Pam Devine, who will be coming on the show later this year.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
I suppose the obvious start is, how the hell did LowCarbUSA come about?
It's quite an amazing story, actually. You know, I was a distance runner back in South Africa. For the people familiar with that, they have a thing called the Comrades Marathon, which is like a cult there. And I started running that, and in the end, continued once I'd moved to the States. I went back. I'd run 5, and I came to the States, and I continued to go back and run it again until I'd run 10. Because what they do is when you run 10, they retire your number, and you get a big thing with a laurel wreath on it, and they print your number on it and everything, and it's kind of special. But during that time, I used to think I was bulletproof. You know, I used to eat as much as I wanted, anything I wanted, and it was almost all carbs. And I sort of varied within about a couple of pounds, about a kilo or so, right throughout the year, and there was no variation in my weight or anything. But then, as I started to get into my later 40s, I found that I was putting on a little bit of weight each year, and not being able to get it off again, you know. And then it didn't matter how hard I was running. I used to think I wasn't running hard enough, and I was being lazy. And my knees were getting sore, and I started to feel like a slug. And I stood on the scale at one point, and I was 35 pounds. So what's that, about 15 kilos or so over my weight that I used to be back in my early 30s when I was doing all of this running. And I was horrified. And just within a couple of days of that happening, I got an email that was titled Ketones, an alternative source of fuel to glucose. And it was just at the right time for me that it piqued my interest, you know. And it was actually someone trying to sell me exogenous ketones. But I didn't even know what a ketone was. I'd never heard of a ketone. That's dinkum the truth, right?
What a piano makes, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. So I started researching it, and I like buried myself in all the research and the technical papers, medical papers, and all that stuff. And after about 3 weeks, it was like, dude, this like explains everything. It explains all the stuff I'm struggling with right now, and it also explains back in my 30s when I used to be incredibly fit, and I would come to the start, to just before the race, and I would follow Tim Noakes's 3-day carbo loading regimen and feel like absolute rubbish on the day of the race, you know, and be thinking, I've got 55 miles and 90 Ks to run up that mountain, and I don't even feel like I can get to the corner. And so it was just the right time for me. And so I just pulled the trigger. I mean, it was a brand new company, and they'd actually run out of stuff. So I couldn't even order the exogenous ketones. But I'd learned so much about the ketogenic lifestyle and the ketogenic diet that to me, it made more sense to actually just do the diet, right? And so I took Pam shopping, and which horrified her. And she was even more surprised that I actually had a list. And we went and bought all of this stuff, all the fatty meats. I used to buy the leanest meats possible. Suddenly I was buying, you know, the ribeye steaks with all the fat in it. The more fat, the better. And going around the outside of the outside aisles of the shop, you know, and getting full Greek yogurt, full cream Greek yogurt, and heavy whipping cream. And it was just, I remember the very, very first meal we had. we had a fire outside, and I went and cooked these 2 steaks. And I remember coming back into the house, and they were sitting on the plate, and there was like all this, because they were ribeyes, right? They had all this fat on it. Plus there was like all this fat like slushing around in the bottom of the plate. And I have such a vivid memory of this, where I actually started giggling like hysterically, like, am I seriously going to eat this? And the first few bites, I literally had to gag it down because of that. I'd programmed my brain to hate fat so much that it was hard for me to actually eat that steak. But like I got about halfway through and was like, you know what, this actually tastes pretty good. And by the end of it, I was loving it. And that was the very first thing. I never looked back, you know. But about within 5 months, the 35 pounds came off. But not only that, I found all sorts of, I started running again, like within about 2 weeks, and it got better and better and better as I became more fat adapted, and as the weight started to come off as well. I started really enjoying running again. But my respiratory issues started clearing up. I stopped snoring, which made Pam really happy. Skin issues that I was having on my ears and all sorts of other little things started to clear up as well. All pain in the head of my knees, a lot of pain in my knees. It was actually making it really difficult for me to run. That just evaporated. I was running way more than I was running before I started this. And yet my knees cleared up completely. I didn't have any pain in my knees. I still don't have any pain in my knees. And, and it was like 5 months later, and we were sitting, it was my birthday, actually. It was the beginning of January in 2016. And I was saying to Pam, like, how is it possible that I didn't know about all of this? And there were a couple of little conferences around the country, like maybe up to 100 people or something, that were talking about it, but it seemed like the same bubble of people that were going around. And I sort of had picked this up by following all the social media stuff about the ketogenic diet. And I started pounding my fists and saying, we need to put 1,000 people in the room. It's like, people need to know about this. And that was how it started. The next day, I wrote to I thought I'd get a core of high profile speakers, and then we'd have something to build this on. And I wrote to a few people, and Jimmy Moore was actually the guy that responded first. Like within about 10 minutes, he said, how can I help? And what he did for me was introduce me to a bunch of these people. I'd never even been to a low carb conference before. I knew how to put on conferences, and Pam and I had been doing that for the work, the job that we were in at the time. But I didn't know that the low carb space at all. And one of the people I wrote to was Gary Taubes. And he got back to me after a couple of days, and I just looked him up on his website and said, contact me, And so he was going backwards and forwards, trying to feel me out, see what I knew, and which was nothing. And eventually he agreed to speak to get on a phone call with me. And part of his interaction had been how much did I understand how, that some of those guys require an honorarium to speak, and how much it was. And I was aware of that. And so now I was also aware of how much his time was worth, right, to him. And we spent an hour on the phone. And I tease him often when I introduce him when he speaks at some of our events, is that it was like I'd asked to marry his daughter, He was like interrogating me. But we got to the end, and he said, okay, if you put this on and you make it happen, then I'll come and speak. And he also agreed to do it at he gave me agreed to a significant discount. And I put the phone down, and I looked at Pam. She was standing in the hallway, in the corridor, like listening. I had the thing on speaker while I was talking to him. And I looked at her and I said, shit, this is good. This is real. You know, we actually, looks like we actually have to put this thing on. That was the turning point. His faith in me made me believe that I was doing something right here. And yeah, I mean, I had to establish a domain, create a website, establish a social media presence. And we put it on in 6 months. We put it on at the end of July that same year. We didn't get 1,000 people in the room. We got about 350, but that was still significantly more than any of the other conferences at the time. And to do that in 6 months, people had to talk me off the ledge about the fact that I was so disappointed that we didn't get 1,000 people. But I had to look back and say, you know what, we still did something pretty great here. And the environment and the camaraderie and the community that we started to develop already from that point onwards, with all those people that came to that first event, was just astounding. And yeah, it's just, and the idea in the beginning was just to put on a conference to reach other people. And Pam was saying to somebody earlier today, it's like, literally, we've done this virtual one that we plan to do for what was to be the Boca event in January will be our 15th conference. So
wow.
But there's so much other stuff that I'm sure we'll get to that's even way more important than these conferences that we do.
Well, Doug, I must say, like, you're a man after my own heart, or I'm a man after your own. Like, I love the balls, and I think the thing that strikes me about this community, right, is that there's so many people like Gary that see the value in giving people that have a spark or a passion to improve not only their own health, but people around them. And the generosity in this community is unbelievable. And I firmly believe that it ties in to the fact that the majority of us are really healthy. And when you're healthy physically, like mentally, it's a natural progression to want to try and pay that forward in some way. I don't know what your thoughts on that are.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. It's just, it's like a very special community, you know. There's a couple of things I can go on about here. When I did my, it was the opening remarks for the 2017 event in West Palm Beach. And one of the big things that I've had is that I had a very severe motor vehicle accident when I was about 22. And I suffered a massive brain injury. And what's become known now as traumatic brain injury, back in those days, they didn't even know about it. And so I suffer with that a lot, and especially short-term memory. And for me, the biggest thing is going blank. And it might even happen while we're talking here. But you know, if I have another idea going on in my brain while I'm talking, then suddenly I don't know what I'm talking about anymore. And so it hasn't gone away, but it is way better than it was before I started this. And you know, hopefully I continue to improve, but I don't expect to be completely healed from it. But I remember saying, I was telling people about this in opening remarks in my testimonial, and it kind of happened to me right there, you know. And I said to them, you see, that it's just happened right now. Luckily, within a short time, I got it back, what I was talking about. Sometimes it never comes back. But I said to them, I think the fact that I'm talking to you people and that you are such a cool crowd, part of my comfort with being vulnerable up on the stage was because of the type of people that you are. And I hadn't planned to say that. It just kind of came out while I was talking, you know. And at that same conference, the lady that was our liaison with the hotel was the same one from This must have been 2018 because it was the same one from the year before. And so she told us that they have a debrief after an event, with all the staff, back office, uh, the cleaners, the kitchen staff, all of those people, and they talk about the event and try and work out how to do things better the next time, sort of thing. And she said that every single different group within the hotel, all of them said without a doubt that this was by far the best group of people they'd ever had at an event at their hotel. And these are the staff guys, those kinds of staff members are there forever, right? And they're having like 3, 4, sometimes 5 events in a week over years and years and years. And they're talking about the fact that this is the best group of people that they've ever had to work with. And Pam said something about, eating butter and drinking cream or something makes people happy. When she made that comment, but it's always stuck with us, that we've hugely privileged to be working with such an amazing community of people. And somehow, I don't know what it is. I don't know whether it's the kind of person, especially we got a lot of doctors and stuff. Maybe it's the kind of doctor that should have been an engineer, that looks at the stuff and says, but this isn't working. Why not, Or they try something on themselves that other doctors are afraid, even though they see it works for them, they're still not prepared to take it to their patients because it's not standard of care. But the ones that do have the guts to do it is a different kind of person to the one that doesn't have the guts to do it.
Yeah.
And so maybe it's a natural selection process, that the type of person that seems to, against the grain, acknowledge the potential of this and have the guts to go and actually do it, is a different type of person. I don't know. Are we still trying to work out why it is that, and maybe it is just that carbs relaxes your brain so much and does away with the anxiety and the depression and all those things that sometimes make people horrible people sometimes, and they're not horrible anymore. I've never really worked it out 100%, I must say.
Well, it's really interesting you bring that up, Doug. And I've got a weird theory that's unproven at this point, but I feel like the chronic illness that comes from poor diet, the depression and anxiety, and certainly the stuff that leads to wanting to take your own life, right?
Mm.
And thankfully, I've never been in that position. I feel like when you break it down from a purely evolutionary point of view, that it's nature's way of just saying, you're not suitable to reproduce, and so I'm going to take you out of the supply chain, which I know sounds pretty brutal, and I'm not like labeling this on anyone, and I wouldn't wish this on anyone, but I really feel like it's the evolutionary cycle just saying, you know what, we want healthy, fit, strongest, fittest survival, that Darwin's theory, right? And
right.
And maybe that is part of it. Maybe it's the body just saying, until you put the right fuel in there, I'm going to take me out of the gene pool.
Mm.
You ever thought of that?
Yeah, I hadn't looked at it from the Darwinian aspect, but that's actually an interesting thought.
I got loads of these ideas that are coming to my mind, but because I've only just taken to running in the last 2 and a bit years, Doug, and I know that you run. Have you counted exactly how many marathons and ultras you've completed?
I stopped counting at 100.
Wow.
So I've probably run, but I'm probably about 110 or so, but about 35 of those are ultramarathon distances. So sort of 56K to 56Ks to 100Ks, that's sort of, or to 90 something Ks.
Yeah. So
that's
there's
the
90 or 100, your biggest one? Yeah.
So the Comrades is I think the longest it's been is about 91 point something. And the up, they alternate directions each year. So the up run, when you start down in Durban and run up to Pietermaritzburg, is a bit shorter, but it's a lot more uphill. So they kind of start down outside the city hall in each of the cities, and then end up on some sports ground somewhere for the finish in the other city. So there's, because of those different endpoints and start points, there's a couple of kilometers difference in the up and the down run. But yes, around 90 Ks is the distance for it.
It's a phenomenal achievement, and you know, people might say that as you were getting older, you know, because of the amount of distance you've been running and the number of ultras and marathons, that, you know, it's only natural that your body starts to break down. The fact that we believe this misinformation is half the issue, I think. The brain's very powerful, and if we keep telling ourselves that certain things are going to happen because we're old, guess what?
Right.
But I found the opposite, you know, in terms of my Benjamin Button-esque body. I seem to be getting better with age.
I totally feel, you know, feel that way. It was like, you know, the running had kind of was reduced because I was hating it so much and it was hurting me so much. But we were doing martial arts as well, and we were doing like back-to-back lessons twice a week instead of going 4 times a week. Like we did 2 back-to-back lessons. So it was like at night, I'd get home at 8:30 at night and I would be wrecked, man, and kind of crawl into bed. And the next day I could hardly get to the toilet, you know? And I remember sitting there with my head in my hands thinking, God, I'm getting old. And when I started keto, within 2 weeks, I would come back from one of those martial arts sessions, go to bed, 5 o'clock in the morning, I'd bounce out of bed and go for a run. And it was like, yeah, I mean, how do you explain that? And by that stage, I'm 51, 52 years old, right? And then we started doing, and I told you to look up Dr. Ben, right? Dr. Ben Bokikio. We've started to incorporate his workout philosophy. He's because you know, when most people start the ketogenic diet, everybody tells them it's not about exercise, it's only about the diet, you know. But most of the time when people look at exercise, they're talking about endurance exercise. But what Dr. Ben talks about is high intensity exercise, and not just high intensity exercise, but high intensity exercise done right. And he literally has a protocol where he does one set of an exercise for each major muscle group. That you choose the weight so that you fail between 30 and 90 seconds. But one of the things he taught me when he finally like coached me personally was what failure really is, because a lot of us give up and think we're failing, but we're not really. But if you genuinely go to failure in that time, and you literally then move immediately on to the next one, you complete the exercise regimen in less than 15 minutes. And then you do it twice a week. And I remember when I started doing that in the July, August, September, October, November, we did an event in Seattle, and I'd had a Dexcom, what's it called, a DEXA scan thing done literally the day after I did my very first workout with him. 3 months later at the event in Seattle, I did it again, and I put on 4 pounds of muscle and lost another pound of fat in that 3 months. It hadn't changed. I was eating exactly the same, not feeling ravenous and eat like, you know, when you run a lot, and that I used to eat like an absolute pig because I was hungry.
Yeah.
But I never got hungry now. In fact, you know, I would go to the gym, Pam and I would go and work out and come back at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and sit and work until 6 before we had supper. Not thinking, God, I'm starving or any of that. Just didn't even think about it, you know. Twice a week, 15 minutes twice a week. And I've continued. I'm about 15 pounds up now on what I was before when I first started it. I'm stronger now at 56 than I have ever been in my life. So nobody can tell me that. And the reason I started looking, before I started working with Dr. Ben, I was already trying to do some weights, because I started to feel like I was going this downhill thing, you know, like as you get older, like you atrophy and you become weak and useless. And I remember when I was young, I used to be able to jump up on a set of dips bars and like just pump out like 20 dips without even thinking about it. Not that I was working out or anything, but just that was easy.
Yeah.
And I remember getting up in the dips bar. In fact, it was at the martial arts studio, and the guy got a new multi-gym thing in that had dips bars on it. And I jumped up there to do some dips, and I got down like about the second one, and I couldn't freaking get up again. And I thought, shit, man, this is ridiculous. So I started trying to do weights, but all that was happening was I was doing 5 sets of this and 4 sets of that, and I was just getting really sore, and that just made the running even more difficult, you know. And so I was hating everything at that before I started this.
Well,
And now and people don't believe me, but I genuinely work out 15 minutes, like the high intensity, 15 minutes twice a week. And this is the result. I'm way stronger than I used to be.
well, I say this a lot in this low carb community, Doug, but you look fantastic for 56.
I know, thanks.
No way I would have picked you for 56, but this is just indicative of someone who's had 3, 4, 5 years of eating this way, you know. And like,
I agree,
just to
totally.
give people an idea, what's a day-to-day regime food-wise for you, roughly?
So sometimes I'll eat something between about noon and 2 o'clock. And
First
it'll
meal,
normally be something quite small. No, I started a couple of years ago. So I used to, way back, I used to make this, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but I used to make biltong.
oh
So
yeah.
South Africa, right, you guys know about it, right? So I started making my own again a couple of years ago. So there's always biltong in the fridge. And more that I need a break from working, because I get up at 4:30 and I start working. And sometimes by 12, between 12 and 2, it's like it's almost an 8-hour day already, you know. And so I'll need a break, and I'll go and grab something from the fridge out of boredom and needing something to get my mind off working. And so now, but if I eat something now at lunchtime, it's biltong. So I'll chop up a couple of ounces of biltong, which is now effectively double that in terms of real meat. So I take 2 ounces of biltong. It's like a 4-ounce steak, right? And that's what I'll eat. And then, but we pretty much eat once a day at night, normally around 5 or 6. And yeah, I mean, to be honest, we recently have become moving more and more towards the carnivore side, eating less and less vegetables. In fact, I very rarely eat anything. Pam makes some sometimes just for some variety or whatever. But to me, I look in the fridge or the freezer there, and I'm looking for something. I say, "What's all this bloody vegetation doing here, man?" Every now and then she'll make some spinach with a bunch of cheddar cheese in and stuff, and it tastes fabulous. And so every now and then I'll have a couple of spoons of that. I am a big avocado fan, so that's the one thing that I eat pretty regularly. That's not meat. But yeah, otherwise it's meat and cheese. You know, a big ribeye steak. And I've started to learn a lot about a lot more. Now we just moved recently out of a communal complex into a standalone house now, and so I'm starting to get back all my braaiing barbecue stuff from the old days. You know, South Africans and Australians are the same. You know, they're all about their barbecue and cooking meat on a fire and all of that kind of stuff. So, but I've been learning a lot about smoking stuff and all of that. So I'm aching to start. I've ordered so many bits and pieces of stuff that I need. I'm waiting for Amazon to deliver it so I can start smoking some ribs and some doing tri-tips and doing a bunch of other stuff that I'm really aching to do. But it's all meat.
I love this, Doug, and I've been on my own dirty carnivore journey for the last it's just over 2 years now, and dirty carnivore is just for anyone listening is like you're not exclusively animal protein. We're talking about not just beef here. We're talking about fish and chicken and shellfish and eggs and anything from an animal, really, and whatever you can tolerate. Some people are better with certain stuff than others. But during May of this year, 2020, I went lion diet for 6 weeks, and I lost 8 kilos of body fat and 5% body fat. So I got down to about 13%.
Wow.
And I was running about 110 Ks a week and on zero carb. And I suppose being in lockdown created a few challenges, because I started to incorporate some honey, because I've been pre-diabetic for a while, and the fastest way for me to reverse that is just to go zero carb. And I've been able to reintroduce some plants, but I haven't felt anywhere near as good as when I go full zero carb.
Mm-hmm.
There's just something magical happens inside my body when I don't compromise it. And I'm only talking about adding a few organic mushrooms and some organic onion,
Right.
cooked into a bone broth, made into a gravy that I pour over the steak. It's
And even that is making a difference. Like you feel less good when you start doing that.
profound
Wow.
from a cognitive function point of view, from an energy level point of view, from a fat loss point of view. Like, I seem to stack on weight very quickly because I'm eating a lot of calorically dense food in the form of meat as well. I'm like, you eat a lot of red meat. Like, I think I eat 7 times the recommendations per week of protein.
Wow.
And but I've put on it's about 10 kilos of lean since I've adopted this keto carnivore lifestyle, verified through DEXA scans and biometric scans, and half a kilo of skeletal bone density. And that's been largely doing a catabolic exercise in the form of running, right? So, because I don't do weights, I do body weight twice a week, but I've only been doing it for about 3 months. Prior to that, I was just doing running. And so how have I put on all this muscle? And it's to do with the amount of protein that I'm getting. It's bioavailable. I'm not bastardizing it with the carbohydrate. That's my theory that's been confirmed by a few people.
Yeah, it could just be that you're moving more now that you don't have all the inflammation, you don't have the extra weight. It's just so much more fun to move, and you don't even, without realizing it, you're just much more active, and you're using your muscles again like you weren't using before, and so that they automatically then, and there's a point of homeostasis, right? So I'm like me, I'm not going to continue to keep putting on weight, but at some point you get to that optimum strength and size or whatever that your muscles are supposed to be.
Yeah.
Like they should have been had you been eating right since you were little, so it could be part of that. You're providing for your body everything that it needs, and so what was actually happening before is that you were sarcopenic. You were actually probably cannibalizing some of their own protein because you weren't getting enough from what you were eating. And so that could be another where you've kind of just normalized back to what you should have been.
Yeah.
And that because you're depriving yourself of all these nutrients and especially amino acids, that your body was actually withering away.
Yeah.
The muscles were withering away, and so they've just come back to what they should have been now that you're eating right.
Well, it's funny because Paul Mason and Professor Noakes and Professor Peter Bruckner all tend to agree on my theory with the skeletal bone density, because I was on medication for 17 years for reflux, omeprazole, Somac or Losec, whichever one you want to call it, Zantac type of stuff, which is a proton pump inhibitor. And the medication now has a bunch of side effects, which include malabsorption of iron, B12 and calcium. And so I think that my skeletal system was leaching calcium to help make up the lack of availability. And now it's reaching
Mm,
that homeostatic place again where I'm
you're
the
right.
size that from an evolutionary point of view, because I
You
got,
should always have been, exactly.
yeah, I got Viking, Scottish, and Viking roots, and they would have been pretty tough bunch, like so. And I'm 40, and I'm in the best shape I've ever been in my life.
Yeah. So
Even
that everybody that's doing this is kind of the saying, it doesn't matter where they are in life, they say they felt better than they've ever felt before. So you can't, how can you argue with that, right?
Well, this is it. This next part I'm pretty keen to explore, Doug, and something that I'm very excited about. You are, I presume, at liberty to talk about this next amazing project that you and Pam are about to launch.
Yes.
Um,
So we did mention it at the event that we did a couple of months ago in San Diego, but just at that stage, we were actually hoping to have it ready to launch by that event, but stuff always takes longer than you expect. But yes, I'm in fact, I'm very keen to talk about it.
well, it's called the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners.
Practitioners, correct.
What's that all
So
about?
yeah, so it's you know, one of the, I was talking earlier about we've done much more important things than the events, and one of the things that we did was to team up with Adele Height, who's now Dr. Adele Height. Long story through Gary Taubes actually put us together because he wanted to do an at the next San Diego event, which is at that point upcoming 2018. He wanted to try and have a session where we got feedback from doctors who were trying it in practice to see what their challenges were, what their successes were, and etc. He agreed to be a part of it, even though he'd already done a talk, mainly because it was his idea, and I could have given him good feedback for the book that he was writing. He suggested that I get Adele to help me mediate that session, because he's obviously been talking to her a lot about this. And she had this thing, and I wrote to her and asked her if she'd mediated. She sent me this 2-page Word document, brain dump, of all her ideas about establishing standard of care around carbohydrate reduction. And it was like, Adele, like, seriously, I just asked you if you'd help mediate this session, But the more I read, and I read this document over and over and over again, and it's all the things that the biggest thing was her official legal definition of standard of care, which she had received from a judge at a court case where she was on the jury, a malpractice suit. And so the judge explained to them what standard of care meant. And I wish I'd actually pulled it up and thought about it. But it basically says that standard of care is what is a consensus amongst a community of physicians in a similar environment with similar training. It's not about, it explicitly says, it's not what they taught in college. It's not even about some set of clinical guidelines, although that can help form the consensus. But it is about what these physicians agree and what they actually do in practice. That is what standard of care means. So if you took 100 doctors and you polled them and said, okay, if somebody's LDL is this, what would you do? And 99% of them will say, put them on statins. That's standard of care. And so what she wanted to do was start building this community and creating a community of people that have these conversations around carbohydrate reduction, so that we can establish over time this consensus, which would then be an alternative standard of care. And the first step in that thing was to develop a set of clinical guidelines for physicians to help them, to give them guidance if they decide they want to practice this what they call therapeutic carbohydrate restriction in their practice as an intervention of some kind, as an option, at the very least, as an option to their patients. And we put together a board of advisors of about 15 different people from around the world: Tim Noakes, Gary Fedke, David Unwin, some really, really high-flying, established people in this community. And she started writing this document and basically bouncing it off them and getting feedback and continuing to update it. At the same time, she was defending her PhD. And we published that document in 8 months from the time she started working on it, which is, it's just astounding. So yeah, at the Seattle event in 2019, I think we officially went public with this thing. And I had also started to create this concept of professional memberships within our LowCarbUSA organization, because I understood that was a requirement, there was a need for these people to have a legitimate place to be. But it was never really it was just never the right place for it. And Tro Kalasian, who's part of the Low Carb MD podcast crew, he and Dr. Brian Lenskes, he started writing stuff on social media about we need to have a professional, a non-profit professional organization. And I wrote to him and I said, Tro, dude, I'm already trying to do that. Let's meet and talk about what we need to do to change what I'm doing to make it better and make it more legit and get more people in. And so we chatted and chatted and chatted and eventually decided that what we really needed was a proper registered non-profit organization that was just established as this professional organization and environment for any practitioner who wants to either practice this or learn about it. If they're not open, if they don't totally agree, or they're not confident enough yet, then there needs to be an official place that they know they can come and know that they're going to get the right information and the correct information, and not some bullshit that they get off the internet, and so I started doing it. I registered the nonprofit and I got a quote and I started building the website. And the idea is that the provider list that we have that enables people to search for a provider in their area that is open to this conversation. So they're not going to say, just put you on a statin, So the provider list is going to migrate over. The clinical guidelines is going to migrate over from LowCarbUSA to now have a real home in this nonprofit. And we're also hoping that, now that this comes and we get it so much, we'll get a whole lot more exposure to it now with some of the really, like Low Carb MD, you've got millions of downloads and all of that kind of stuff. So when they start talking about it, so many more people than have even heard of LowCarbUSA are going to come and take a look. They can put their information in there. So hopefully, almost overnight, we're going to, I'm hoping by an order of magnitude and even orders of magnitude, increase the size of that provider database for people around the world, and anybody can put their information in there. And so just grow this community of providers that are so anybody that's doing keto now, you ask, almost all of them will tell you that their biggest hurdle is to find a doctor that actually will support them. That's the hardest thing. But most of the doctors still got their heads in the sand. There's a lot of doctors that already realize that this is important, but it's not standard of care. So they won't tell their patients about it because they're afraid.
Yeah.
This is going to give them the backup that they need to go out there and be confident to start talking about it. I was on a meeting earlier today with the lass that's doing the website, and we were hoping to already be starting to test it. Hopefully by the end of this week, we'll be testing it. Another week into November, we're going to do like a soft launch with like people in our community that that have been so supportive of us. Like, we're going to push it out to them first and let them take a look at it and give us some feedback and look for typos and broken links and all that kind of stuff. And so maybe by the middle of November, we will officially launch it. And I almost forgot, the most important thing with this is that what we've done is define a series of pathways to achieve accreditation, so that when a practitioner becomes accredited, they will have an SMHP accredited badge on their profile, so people can see. There'll be a filter as well on the provider list for SMHP accredited providers, so it'll just find them. But they will also be able to use the credentials MHP after their name, so that to me, that is like just, I believe, going to be the most amazing thing. And all of this happening, they're going to have forums in there now where they can have these discussions where it's going to be properly documented. And as those discussions grow, that keeps building our database of just like talks and discussions that form the consensus, so that you know, and all the feedback that's going to come from all of these clinicians into what we still need, how we need to change the guidelines. So we will keep updating those guidelines as we get feedback from these discussions. And yeah, down the road, fairly shortly, I would imagine that we would have a standard of care that would stand up in court. And that's pretty special, I think.
This is huge, Doug. This is massive. And I think for people that are listening that aren't 100% sure about what's going on here, it's, I suppose the layman term is that now there's a place where medical professionals and like non-medical professionals can do the certification as well. Yeah.
Correct. There's a different pathway for them, but yes. So and we need those coaches. The doctor talks to their patient, convinces them they need to change their lifestyle, but they can't coach them. So we need qualified and accredited coaches now that so they're all part of this community. So it's not like a closed doctors only group, right? Because the doctors are the ones that know the least about this nutrition thing anyway. So it's about anybody that wants to contribute in some way to helping other people to learn about this and adopt it in their lives.
Well, I'm hoping, Doug, by the time that this episode comes out, that your website will be live, and I'll be able to, if it is, I'll post it in the show notes.
Yeah, as soon as it is. In fact, what I'll do is as soon as it goes soft launch live, like where it's actually on the, you know, we're not promoting it though. As soon as we have that soft launch, though, I will include you in that group of people that get invited to check it out. So then yeah, feel free to share that because that'll be the main live URL. And you in fact, now if people go there now, it's metabolicpractitioners.org. But right now, all it is a form to fill in to say, hey, I'd like to learn more about this. And so basically what we do is every now and then we send an email out to that group saying, this is where we are. Sorry, we said we would be done by the end of November, but it looks like it's going to push out a little bit. So we keep people updated. And then once it is live, those people will be included in that soft launch group as well. So they'll get first access to it.
So metabolicpractitioners.org.
Yeah.
So what type of individual would you encourage to be a part of this, to sign up, to do the...
Okay, well, so there's two parts. There's we one of the big things that we're going to be doing is providing education, like a bunch of free education to the Joe public. So there would be a little bit of coaching about how to do the ketogenic diet and all of that kind of stuff. But the majority of it was something that I hadn't even thought about until our education committee sort of came up with it. But what we really need is outreach stuff. Like, so if people want to learn about this, if they've heard about it and they're not sure, they want to come and find the genuine article, if they want to come and learn genuinely what this is about and why it might be a good thing for them personally or in their practice, then they should come and take a look at the website, and there will be this stuff, and we will try and develop more and more stuff that's innovative, that will reach the people like I was before I heard about ketones, right? And about these doctors that refuse to acknowledge that a ketogenic diet may be an option. So that's one group of people that should come, is anybody that's heard of keto that wants to learn more about it, what it really is. But then from a practitioner point of view, once you want to become a practitioner, first of all, for free, you can put your information into the database. But all that's going to do is list you in that thing. People can search and find someone in your zip code or city or whatever. They'll be able to pull up your profile. They'll be able to contact you and engage you, make an appointment or whatever. But what was I saying? So now, gone blank, like I said I would. Remind me what
I think you did really well to last that long. That's brilliant.
Yeah. So where was I going? About the
about who can join up, like what the, and then you're free.
Right. Yeah. So practitioners, from the orthopedic surgeon like Gary Fatke, and bariatric surgeon like Dr. Rob Sivas, who's on our board, down to a regular GP, down to registered dietitians, nutritionists, keto coaches, sports coaches and stuff, who have taken on this concept of changing their diets, or at least encouraging a lot of their clients to adopt this thing, especially the endurance athletes. But more and more and more high intensity athletes are starting to understand that they can get, at the very least, they can get the same performance on a ketogenic diet. But so yes, their performance is the same, but they are now infinitely healthier. They're not metabolically sick.
Yeah.
Because you can be a high performing athlete and still be metabolically sick. You haven't dropped dead yet, but you are on your way, right? So now you get someone performing at the same level, but now they are metabolically healthy as well. And so they will continue to be. And as they stop their high, especially if they're competitive in that, they stop competing and, back down on all the exercise that they're doing, or a lot of the exercise that they're doing, they will continue to be healthy and live a long life, hopefully. There's so many used to be elite athletes who have died young, who are terribly sick. And, we're hoping to try and avoid that. So anybody that wants to be a coach like that sees that, hey, maybe I want to introduce this, maybe exclusively, I only want to coach people who want to do the keto diet, right? I only want to coach runners that do the keto diet. Or I see it could be good for a bunch of them. So I at least want to learn about it so I can offer this as an option to them. Keto coaches, we need so many of them to teach people how to do this keto diet, so that when they become aware of the fact that they can get better, they can get off their meds, all of that stuff that their doctor tells them. Most people are not able to just go and look up on the internet on how to do a keto diet and just do it. Most people need a lot of guidance, and some people need active hand holding. And we have at least one, and probably more down the road, of mentoring type programs as well, where it involves a live coach and stuff like that. There's anybody. That's why we're calling it practitioners as opposed to physicians or clinicians or anything like that, because it's not only for them, it's for everybody that wants to practice this concept of therapeutic carbohydrate restriction.
It's so inspiring, Doug. The timing of this podcast is really just so profound in my own life. Like I said, it must be over 2.5 years now since I started down initially doing a ketogenic diet, and like you have removed more and more plants, and really for 2 years have been on this dirty carnivore, right? And it's really hard to explain to people that haven't got any exposure to it. Sometimes you grapple from a credibility point of view, because don't have a medical background. You don't have a medical background. You come from an engineering background. I think you used to work for Motorola for many years, making mobile phones or CB radios. Roger that, 10-4, Big Daddy.
Television set-top boxes. Yeah.
Well, there you go. Right. So what do you know about low carb? And it's having that layer of credibility where you can go, actually, mother flipper.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing, is that even if the doctors as a whole knew so much about this nutrition thing, which most of them don't, there's no reason why me as an engineer who thought very seriously about becoming a doctor when I was young, right? There's no reason why I can't read the same textbooks that they read at college about any subject, let alone nutrition, and understand and be as well versed in that physiology or whatever as the doctor. If I put the time in and I learn it, I can know as much, if not even more, than a doctor on that particular subject. And so it's the same with this. I'm really trying to work with the doctors to be open to the fact that other people other than them can know a lot about this. And in fact, a lot of the times, the good ones that are embracing this understand that they can learn so much from, look at all the people that are doing amazing research now. Ivor Cummins, Dave Feltman, the list goes on and on. Those guys are engineers and scientists.
Yeah.
They're not doctors. And what the doctors often forget is even this medicine that even the medics, because all they do, most of them, what they do is they just prescribe medicines, right, for any particular condition. But even those medicines were developed by some scientist in a lab, not by a doctor, for the most part, right? So everything that they prescribe and have learned about was worked out by, at some point, for the most part, somebody that wasn't a doctor. And yet they accept that. But when Dave Feltman comes along and says, hey, maybe you should look at cholesterol a little differently, it's like, what do you know? You're just an engineer.
Yeah.
One of the most prominent guys in the type 1 diabetes field, and his name's escaped me for a minute right now, and I apologize to him for that, but he's the head of Type 1 Grit, which is a Facebook group that focuses on type 1 diabetes, and they use Dr. Bernstein's teachings in that. But he was a speaker at our very first 2016 event, and he is a rocket scientist. He's genuinely a rocket scientist, right?
That's awesome.
He got up on the stage and he talked about all of this work. And since then, he's had papers published and all sorts of stuff about the work that they've done for type 1 diabetics in this field. And he brought his son up onto the stage. And the reason that he had learned all about this was because his son was type 1. And they were telling him to eat a bunch of carbs and just take all this insulin. And, taught him that this is the progression. You'll slowly but surely keep increasing the insulin dose over your life and whatever. And he refused to accept that. So he went and started studying. And now when he brought his son up onto the stage, like he showed a graph, and the guy's glucose is just like, it's just like flat, and the guy now, he's what, 4 or 5 years older now. He's 17 years old or something. He's playing football. He's doing all of these kinds of things that he, as a youngster, his dad was told he would never be able to do. Um, yes, he has to take a little bit of insulin. We need some insulin to function, right? But he's got type 1, what's his name? Type 1 Burger. Andrew Berger is the guy that came to our event a couple of years ago. And he's talking about, he was on over 200 units of insulin when he started doing the ketogenic diet. And then he got down to about 20 when he came to our event. And then he learned from Dr. Ben and he started doing Dr. Ben's workouts. He's now down to like 3, and he comes here to, like, we had him over here for lunch and that, and he brings his little bag of insulin and stuff and he puts it in the fridge. He's a type 1. He has to be aware all the time that something can happen. But I've seen him go and get a unit of insulin once in all the times that we've been together and that. And other than that, he doesn't need more than a couple of units a day. You tell a type 1, or tell any doctor that's worked with type 1s a couple of years ago that was even vaguely possible, and they would flatly deny that it's possible. And yet this guy's done it, So anyway, I talk a lot. Sorry.
No, this is.
I actually talk very little until I start talking about this, and then it's like then the floodgates open, right?
This is the whole point, because this will help a lot of people, Doug. I promise you that. And I heard a great quote yesterday from a friend of mine, Vin Jiang, who I think he borrowed this from someone else. I can't quite remember. The quote is, "Reality is negotiable," and I just love that, because given what's happened in the world for the last year, everything's on the table. And the fact that if you can allow yourself to be open-minded to understanding or believing something that might be the polar opposite of what you've been told your entire life, then that's the greatest position to be in. And removing the blinkers. I had to do it out of necessity, and it's opened up Pandora's box for me. And I now have this burden of responsibility where I'm making it my life's mission to be the world's most influential motivational speaker. And it's going to tie in with a lot of this stuff, because I feel truly, Doug, that I can, or that human beings can reverse and mitigate most of the problems in the world through diet.
I would second that for sure. It's incredible. And even some of the acute things might well not appear at some point if the person is metabolically healthy, that they are more resistant to it or whatever. So even the incidences of acute conditions and diseases may even come down over time if everybody started to eat right. I believe that.
And I suppose, like, I had Dr. James Mukey on the podcast earlier this year, who's the current Australian of the Year. I'm sure he'll probably get involved with the low carb down under or LowCarbUSA at some point, because he's doing a lot of work regarding trying to get the dietary guidelines changed in Australia, because he's an eye surgeon, an ophthalmologist, who's sick of operating on type 2 diabetics that are going blind because of their diet.
Right.
And so he's involved with Professor Peter Bruckner, and I think Paul Mason to some extent, Gary Fetke as well, I think. So, like, and he was talking about that Australia, probably like the UK and the US, we're on track to spend 100% of our GDP on type 2 diabetes by the year 2039, which is less than 19 years from now, right?
No.
And if you put a dollar value on that, maybe that might shock a few people into doing something about it, because that's not a sustainable business model. The whole country is going to go bankrupt. Then that will descend into anarchy. You know what I mean?
No, it's true. But I also feel like so many people have their heads in the sand, and you throw out huge numbers like that, and it just goes like straight over their heads. It's not personal enough. It's not real enough. And I feel like, unfortunately, people have to have a personal scare, before they will consider it. Right now, down the road, hopefully it's like smoking, where everybody's taught that it's accepted that this is the way you need to eat. If you don't, this is what's going to happen to you. And then some people will still eat like that, but that's okay. It's their choice. Um, but everybody needs to be brought up with the understanding that carbs are poison, and they're not necessary. Like Rob Sivers says it all the time. Like there are two macronutrients, protein and fat. He said there is zero requirement for carbohydrates in our system,
Yeah.
zero. And so it's just a poison. That's how I see it.
You reminded me with Dr. Robert, you mentioned off camera about his, public challenge with sugar, and being in some of the most strictest, stringent lockdown requirements in the world in Melbourne here for the last 3 months. I fell off the wagon at times with regards to sugar, and it's mainly ice cream is my thing, because I still see it as like kind of carnivore because it's got the cream in it.
Yeah.
But because I was so active, I could destroy an entire liter, which is like a pint and a half, I think, in your terms, and a bag of like Cadbury flakes ground over the top, and not be the size of a house. But I it makes me feel so terrible, because there's the shame and the guilt and the not practicing what I preach, and then obviously the blood sugar fluctuation. So I've tried a few different things, but I've almost finished reading Alan Carr's Easy Way. It's called Good Sugar, Bad Sugar. And it's the Alan Carr, the guy who wrote the Easy Way Stop Smoking book, not the comedian, Allen Carr, C-A-R-R. And I found it very helpful. He promotes eating fresh fruit and vegetables. He died about 12 years ago. And so I don't think he had an opportunity to catch up to where we're at now with this low carb stuff, because he recommends, eating less meat and stuff. But if you can put that part out of your mind and focus on the psychology or the neuro-linguistic programming component of the book, it's been really powerful, because I gave up smoking 6 years ago after listening to his book.
Wow. Okay.
And it removes the craving component. So for smoking, I haven't even come close to relapse. I have no interest in it. And I've been able to do that with all my addictions, drinking, gambling, drugs. I've removed the desire, and I know that I will conquer the sugar. And it seems to be abstinence makes the heart grow fonder with this stuff. And the only way you can really do that is on a carnivore style diet.
Yeah, complete. And Rob talks about that a lot as well. I mean, he treats all his patients as addicts, and it's like, you don't tell an alcoholic, just have one beer a night or something.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Everybody, you laughed. That's everybody think that's stupid. Who's going to tell an alcoholic to have a beer a night? Just one in moderation. You just can't. If you're not a carb addict and you genuinely can have a bowl of ice cream once a month or something at a special occasion or whatever, then go have at it. But most people are, to some extent, carboholics, sugar addicts, and it's a slippery slope. And once you do it once, and you think, I did it already, so what's another one or whatever. And the next minute you're talking yourself into it, and without even suddenly you realize, shit, I'm eating one of these tubs of ice cream like every night now.
Yeah.
And how did that when did that happen? And that's the addiction part of it, and so if you genuinely know that you're not addicted and you can genuinely have a cheat thing, whatever, every now and then go for it. But most of us are not like that, and so just not being prepared to eat it at all is the best way to make sure over the long period that you sustain it.
Yeah, and I think people are worried about the implications of the social impact, not because there's such an emotional tie with food and family and this other stuff. And if you, as soon as you develop the courage to make the decision, you people slowly come around, and then because they see that you're thriving, they start asking questions, and more often than not, they'll get on board at some point, right?
Right.
When I did that period of lion diet early this year, I started to introduce honey, and at first it was a little half a teaspoon, and within 3 weeks I was eating half a kilo of raw honey and
Wow.
the honeycomb a day,
Wow.
and like half a kilo of, like, I don't know, 80-90% carbohydrate food. It was. Can you imagine the roller coaster of blood sugar and
Yeah,
like.
yeah, no, that's a slippery slope for sure. But you see, like I said, it's that same thing. Like you have a little bit to start with, and then you look back and think, how am I eating half a kilo a day? When did that happen?
Yeah.
You probably can't even remember how that happened.
It was like that. It was
Yeah.
like, oh, because I was in phenomenal shape and I was exercising a lot, and I felt it, you seem to feel really good when you start reintroducing stuff. But then all of a sudden, you fast forward 6 weeks and you've put on all the weight and some, and you're not running as much. You're starting to get sore, and it's
Yeah.
like, oh man,
All of
like
that
raw
stuff.
honey as well.
Yeah.
So I think, Doug, we should find a place to wrap this up. This has been a brilliant conversation, and I'm so grateful that you've been involved with this initiative, and I really look forward to being able to engage with you in the future, and we'd love to be involved with this the secret society of metabolic health practitioners.
It's not secret. It's
It's like the
it's just new.
stonecutters or the masons, and but we want to get it out there as much as we can. Is there anything that you'd like to finish on before we wrap this up?
Um, I don't know. I think uh, I'd like to go back to what you said, maybe about peer pressure and all of that. Just to encourage people and especially now we're coming up to the holidays and stuff. And in the US we've got Thanksgiving in November and then Christmas in December, and it's like, you know what? If you really have to, if you can't, I'd say don't go intending to cheat, right? Go with a plan. Go with like a pocket full of biltong or macadamia nuts or something like that you can nibble on, if you're tempted or whatever. But at the end of the day, if you have a piece of cheesecake or I don't know, some mashed potatoes or whatever, then don't beat yourself up. Just go home and start the next day and get back on the horse. But don't let the holidays, don't let it, you get so freaked out, because that's like cortisol and stress and all of that kind of stuff is also a huge impact on your health, right? So if you are so stressed about going to your Christmas dinner that, okay, so you don't eat any you don't eat any carbs, but like the cortisol through the roof, and you've done yourself some may possibly even more damage than if you're just eating the damn mashed potato. So yeah, so that's one thing about the holidays. But I hear so many people where they struggle because they get it, they read about it, they think, I need to do this, it's going to help me. But then they fail because their parents, their siblings, their friends, and unfortunately their doctors all tell them that they're being stupid and they're going to kill themselves or whatever, something to that effect.
Yeah.
So I encourage those people to seek out Facebook groups, organizations like ours, and find a community of people that believe in it and that will support you and that will answer you, the way you can ask questions and you're not going to be told, oh, you're going to die. They will answer your questions, explain why you're having trouble with whatever. And we talked about it earlier in the discussion, that somehow this community of people are a special breed, and everybody wants, once they realize how much good it's done for them, they feel compelled. I think that was the word you used. They feel compelled to help other people with it. And so everybody will give you the time of day but you need to find those communities. That's something you need to actively do, is find a community, find a Facebook group that supports your lifestyle or your intended lifestyle, and then you will be successful. Don't let your family and your friends and your doctors pull you down and pull you back into the gutter. I think that would be that's the thing that's made me the saddest, is seeing people who find the answer, understand that it can help them, but in the end they're not able to sustain it because of the lack of support from their surroundings. So please get some help. We're all here to help you. Write to me if you have to, but find someone that's going to support you.
Love that, Doug, and I can't help but feel like I want to contribute a little bit more to that as well. Like the feeling that you will get when you are brave enough to make the decision to say no, and if it even means keeping people, even family members out of your life or at an arm's length while you are making the most of this, you need to do it. You need to do it, because how good you'll feel and how good you'll look will be undeniable, and you will be a leader and a role model within your circle of community, and your life will never be the same again.
Yeah.
In a good way.
And hopefully then you can be that person that helps someone else who's in that place that you were a little while back, right?
100%, 100%. Doug, this has been wonderful. We can find you through lowcarbusa.org.
LowCarbUSA.org is the place to go. Yeah. So we YouTube as well. We've got a ton of videos and stuff. Our podcasts. We've got a podcast as well. So there's a Low Carb USA podcast. You search for Low Carb USA on YouTube, and on Facebook, and on Twitter, and on Instagram. So yeah, it's Low Carb USA on everything. And it's .org, not .com.
Correct. Ladies and gentlemen, Doug Reynolds.
Thanks so much for having me, man. It's been a pleasure.